श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धो रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः। पुरुषकारवैभवं च साधनस्य गौरवम् तदधिकारिकृत्यमस्य सद्गुरूपसेवनम् हरिदयामहैतुकीं गुरोरुपायताञ्चयः वचनभूषणे वदज्जगद्गुरुं तमाश्रये। I am extremely happy to have started this sharing of knowledge of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, an extremely evolved Sampradaya which is based on strong theoretical foundations as well, and which has stood the test of time for the last several millenniums. Of course, it was systematized and brought into vogue by Sri Ramanujacharya, who appeared in the 11th century, as we all know, from which it has spread far and wide. To say a very few words about the historical implications. So Ramanujacharya was the first Acharya to have integrated the entire world under the banner of bhakti or devotion. And as we all know, as we are all familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Ramanujacharya very clearly says there is only one path to attain liberation, and that is bhakti. Though we come across several statements in the Upanishads as well as Bhagavad Gita which says Jnana is also a path, Ramanujacharya in most of his treatises does not even mention about Jnana. Because human psychology is, when you mention about something else apart from the main issue, it will try to inquire into what is that other thing, and focus is lost on the main aspect. So Ramanujacharya was the first person who actually united the entire population of the world which was intending to attain liberation under the banner of bhakti. And later in his lineage came several Acharyas who propounded this path further, refined it, fine-tuned it according to the needs of the people. And several shining jewels that adorn this unique lineage include Pillai Lokacharya. So I will just switch on the slide so that you can get an idea of what I am talking about. So I would like to say a few words about Acharya. And even before that, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you to this class on Mumuksupadi. So the word Mumuksupadi contains two principal segments. One is called Mumukshu and the second is known as Padi. So in the word Mumukshu is a Sanskrit word which is translated as one who desires to be liberated or one who wishes to be liberated. Moksham ichuhu mumukshuhu is how the word is analyzed. Moksha refers to liberation or salvation or several other words that are used in English language, which essentially means that the individual soul or the Jivatma as it is known goes beyond this cycle of births and deaths, continuous cycle of births, continuous and almost eternal cycle of births and deaths, and then attains an exalted location where he enjoys eternal bliss. Later what happens, that is not the same for all the Jivatmas, because these things have been explained and debated upon in detail in the Shri Bhashya. But there is universal acceptance that the liberated soul goes beyond the cycle of births and deaths and enjoys unlimited, unalloyed bliss. And as Jivatmas or as individual souls, all of us who are under bondage would like to transcend this cycle of births and deaths and ultimately attain liberation. So that is why in the Indian context, we talk about the four Purusharthas. Many a times when I discuss with persons from different walks of life, different countries, especially people from outside India, I ask them, even including Indians, because many Indians are not aware of these things nowadays, younger Indians especially, what is the purpose of human life? For example, when I see a book which is in front of me, this book has been published with a particular intention. If I have a phone in front of me, that phone has been manufactured with a particular intention in mind. Similarly, we have been given this body, this birth, for a particular purpose. So what is that purpose? Can we define it? What is the objective? What is the aim of human life? This is one very important question. Many a times, by the time we contemplate on what life is all about, half or more than half of our life is over. I have come across several people who attend different classes conducted by me. So they say we are 65 years old, we are 70 years old. Though we know that liberation is the ultimate, we have not really realized that we have to strive for liberation and do something or the other for the sake of it. So, Indian sages who started from the Vedic times and whose teachings are relevant eternally, they contemplated on this aspect more and more. And many a times, my father, who is also my Acharya, he keeps telling, Indian culture is essentially human culture which is universal. It is not limited to the geographical location of India. So they actually defined the goals of life, namely Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. So I will not go into the explanation of these because Most of you are quite familiar with these things. And when it came to moksha, there are several theories, several different philosophies, different schools of thought, etc., which say this is what it is all about. We have the Mayavadi's theories, we have several theories within the Mayavada itself. Then later also we have the Sankhya theory, we have the Yoga theory, we have the several other theories that are prevalent in the Indian philosophical context. But as we all know, and as we are pursuing, it is the philosophy of Vishishtadvaita propounded by Ramanujacharya, which has Vaishnavism as its practical aspect, which has been able to deliver with maximum potency the way to attain liberation to the spiritual aspirants, to the mumukshus, as they are called in philosophical parlance. So here I would like to stress about a few fundamental issues which are greatly confused people, and people do not know the distinction between these two things. This is widely prevalent across India, where people seem to be familiar with the philosophies of the sampradaya, etc., but they are not exactly knowing what Vishishtadvaita philosophy is and what sampradaya is. Sri Vaishnavism is used as a synonym to Vishishtadvaita. So in the Vishishtadvaita philosophy, because now I suppose the aim of this class is to understand the fundamentals of our philosophy and also our sampradaya, which is the Sri Vaishnava sampradaya, in a proper context, proper perspective. I am mentioning about these things. So when we talk about our philosophy and religion, it is the philosophy of Vishishtadvaita. It is only in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, Ramanuja Siddhanta, we have two distinct portions, two distinct categories. One category is known as the Shastra Bhaga, and the second category is known as the Sampradaya Bhaga. So we have the philosophy aspect, which is given as Shastra Bhaga, which very clearly defines the strong theoretical foundations of the religion of Sri Vaishnavism. And the Sampradaya Bhaga is given by the word Sri Vaishnavism, which is actually the practical application of what is mentioned in the Vishishtadvaita Siddhanta. So when you compare this with other philosophies, other religions, for example, when you take Christianity, I would like to first mention that what I am mentioning is not intended to belittle any sampradaya, any philosophy or anything. Just it's a contrast to know the speciality of our sampradaya or philosophy. So when you take philosophies like, religions like Christianity and Islam, they don't have a philosophy to back them up. They don't have any theoretical foundations that are given as a separate field based on which the philosophy, religion is practiced. Similarly, when you take the philosophy of Sankhya or Advaita in the Indian context, it is seen that they don't have a religion. So Advaita says it is generally called as Mayavada by some people. So whether it's the right word or not, that's a different issue which I am not going to touch now. But it says the Jivatma and Paramatma, the individual soul and the Supreme Soul are one and the same. So then where does the question of sadhana or where does the question of practice come? Because once it is decided that they both are one and the same, what else needs to be done is the question. So it does not have a religion or a practical aspect. It ends with the theory only. And the religions like Christianity and Islam, they do not have philosophical foundations. Similarly, when we talk about the philosophy of Plato, of Socrates, etc., they are actually known as armchair philosophers, where they will just be sitting on an armchair and speculating. Of course, it doesn't mean that we are belittling them or telling them that they are not good. But it ends there. It ends with some intellectual activity. It has nothing to do with any practical issue. That is why it has been mentioned that philosophy without religion is lame, and religion without philosophy is blind. So the uniqueness of the Siddhanta or of the philosophy propounded by Ramanujacharya is, he named the philosophy portion, the Siddhanta portion or the Shastra portion as Vishishtadvaita. And if one has to practically implement the philosophy, it is known as Sri Vaishnavism, which is known as the Sampradaya Bhava. So, as I mentioned, in India itself, there is a huge misconception that these two terms, essentially technical terms, are actually used as synonyms to each other, which is totally wrong. So, the theoretical foundation aspect or the theoretical portion is named as Vishishtadvaita, whereas the practical aspect is known as Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is known as Sampradaya. So the Shastra Bhaga gives the theoretical aspects, and the application of the theoretical aspects in a very unique, versatile, comprehensive manner is given in the Sampradaya Bhaga known as Sri Vaishnava. So how does one actually study this? So we have to actually, as I mentioned, philosophy without religion is lame, and religion without philosophy is blind. So if a person has to move forward, he has to be able to see, and he also has to be able to move. So philosophy and religion complement each other in a very unique manner. That is why a great philosopher called P.N. Acharya mentions Vishishtadvaita is the only Siddhanta, or it is the only philosophy which is the philosophy of a religion. Others are purely religions or purely philosophies. They are not interconnected to each other in a way that this philosophy is connected with a religion. So this is a very important and unique aspect that one has to know as far as our Shastra and our Sampradaya is concerned. So coming to the study of these two aspects are concerned. As I mentioned, there are two works that concern the Shastra Bhaga, the philosophy aspect, and two works that are associated with the Sampradaya Bhaga, the practical aspects. So, we have the two Sanskrit treatises authored by Bhagavan Ramanujacharya. That is the Sri Bhashyam, which is a commentary on the Brahma Sutras of Said Vyasa, or Badarayana as he is known in his own words. And then you have the Gita Bhashyam of Ramanujacharya, which is a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, where he very systematically systematizes the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita. Because many a times people may wonder what is the need for a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is authored in the most simplest Sanskrit possible. So what is the need for a commentary? I will not go into those details because that's a very vast topic in itself. Because we come across several objections that are raised on the Bhagavad Gita where it says there are several contradictions. In one place it says Jnana is the main path, in another place it says Bhakti, in another place it says Karma. So there are several contradictions in the Gita like that many people say. But It is not so. And this aspect has been very well brought out by Ramanujacharya, who has contributed in a very unique manner to reach the message of the Bhagavad Gita to the masses. So these two treatises are most important as far as the philosophy portion of Vishishtadvaita is concerned. That is the Sri Bhashyam and the Gita Bhashyam. Then, when it comes to practically implementing the philosophy, we have the Sampradaya Bhaga, that is the Sri Vaishnavism portion, which has two principal works. That is the Bhagavad Vishayam and then the Rahasya Granthas. So the Bhagavad Vishayam is the commentary on the Tiruvai of Nammalvar. So Nammalvar, as we know, is the greatest devotee, past, present and future. We can very safely say. And many a times people from ISKCON don't know. Now it's not their fault, of course, but to say a few words about Nammalvar and his relationship with Lord Krishna, it is said that Rishim Jushamahe Krishna Trishna Tattva Nivodhitam. So Nammalvar was the personification of the thirst of bhakti, thirst which was actually quenched by Lord Krishna. So he is the personification of Krishna Trishna Tattva, or the reality which is the longing for the experience of Krishna in all aspects. In all aspects, in mind, in body, in soul, etc., etc., etc. That is why he says, Unnum shoru paruham neer tinnum methalayum ellam kannam. So he says, the food I consume, the water I drink, and also the betel leaves that are consumed after consuming food. Everything for me is Lord Krishna only and nothing more. So in Sanskrit, when it's analyzed in a philosophical manner, we need three things to sustain ourselves, that is known as Dharaka, Poshaka and Bhogya. Dharaka is that which is required to sustain life in this body, and that is food. So items like rice, dal, etc. So without food, a person cannot survive. Then for the food to be digested and to be taken to all parts of the body, we need water, which is known as Poshaka. And though the human needs, basic needs ends with Dharaka and Poshaka, that is food and water, still people feel they want to enjoy something. And that is mentioned as Bhogya. That is object of enjoyment, which is given here as Innum Vettalaya. In Indian tradition, after a very great meal, a feast is consumed. A person has a meal that is associated with a feast or a feastful meal. Generally, they have betel leaves with betel nuts. So it enhances the taste of the food. It helps the food to be digested properly. There are several positive aspects. Of course, no negative aspects unless it is consumed too much. So from the point of view of wellness also, it is very important, which I am not going to. So Nammalvar says, all these three are Lord Krishna only for me, because he never consumed any food physically during his lifetime. So in the Tiruvai, we see that how from the beginning to the end, that is, what is the beginning of bhakti, where is the beginning of bhakti, how it starts, how it progresses. In the process of the progression of bhakti, where does Sharanagati, or the most unique aspect of Sri Vaishnava philosophy, that is surrender, comes. and ultimately what happens to the person who is a devotee. How the Lord himself takes the responsibility of taking the devotee to liberation. The very beautiful aspect or unique aspect of the Tiruvaimozhi of Nammalvar is, before he is granted liberation, the entire description of the Archiradi Marga, which is available only in the Upanishads. No other Alwar has experienced the Archiradi Marga and mentioned it in any sort of words. And what Nammalvar has mentioned is totally in consonance with what has been mentioned in the Upanishads as far as the Archiradi Marga is concerned, where the liberated soul travels from this world to the Vaikuntha Loka, how he is welcomed there, what all happens during the process. Everything is beautifully described by Nammalvar, which no other Alwar or no other saint in any Sampradaya has mentioned. I can say that without any hesitation. So we see that we have the greatest model of a devotee, a bhakta, a sharanagata, a prapanna, as he is called in Sri Vaishnava parlance in Nammalvar. And to know the nuances of the stanzas, more than 1500 stanzas composed by Nammalvar in 4 of his works, we need the commentaries of our Purvacharyas who adorned the lineage, among whom Acharya is one of the greatest shining stars. So as far as the Sampradaya Bhaga, the practical aspect is concerned, we need to study the commentary of the commentaries. In fact, there are 5 commentaries actually. Commentaries of the Tiruvaimozhi of Nammalvar, which is one of the greatest topics of study a person can ever have. Then what happens? How does he practically implement? What should he do? So now a person studies the Sri Bhashyam, he studies the Gita Bhashyam. Then later he studies the Bhagavad Vishyam also. Then he asks, what should I do? Then the answer is given in the Rahasya Granthas, which are the secret teachings. As you know, Rahasya means secret. So secret teachings regarding the practical aspects of Sri Vaishnavism, which is given by Acharya in his Ashtadasha Rahasyas, or 18 Rahasya Granthas that he has authored. So now today, suppose a person takes the Sri Vaishnava Diksha, he takes Samashrayanam. What does he have to do? The answer is given by the first work in this series, which is Mumuksupadi. Here the question arises, why is it that it is called Rahasya? Why is it that it is called secret teachings? Because once we have authored it and published it, where is the secrecy? So today it's available online. Is it appropriate to call it as Rahasya Granthas? So my Acharya used to tell me that earlier these would not be written down. They would not be committed to writing. They were given from Guru to Shishya, Guru to Shishya, Guru to Shishya in this lineage. But due to the deterioration of the standard of human beings, over a period of time, there came a situation where it occurred to the great Acharyas like Acharya that if these things are not written down, if they are not committed to writing, if they are not recorded in a written form, then there may be much dilution and ultimately the knowledge may be lost for posterity. Therefore, though it is known as Rahasya Granthas, they had to commit it to writing and mention all the aspects associated with the practical aspect of Sri Vaishnavism, what is known as these Rahasya Granthas. That is the 18 works authored by Acharya, which are known as the Ashtadasha Rahasyas. So this includes several of his works like Sri Vachana Bhushana, Parandapadi, etc., which is, the list is available online and you can have it. So Acharya was, in a way, the greatest Acharya who committed to writing all the Rahasya aspects and the practical aspects that Sri Vaishnava has to follow. So many a times when we talk about what are the issues, how it includes how a Sri Vaishnava has to conduct himself in his personal life, how he has to respect his Acharya, how he has to respect his disciples. For example, in the Sri Vachana Bhushana, I will mention just one sample. In the Sri Vachana Bhushana, he says, if a guru or Acharya thinks that I am the Acharya and the person who is the Shishya is his disciple, he will cease to be an Acharya in the real sense of the term. He should never think that I am the Acharya. So he should think that I am the instrument in the hands of my Acharya and I am the representative of my Acharya. Then how should he treat his Shishya or disciple? So, though he himself has initiated his Shishya, his disciple, into the path of Sri Vaishnavism, he should treat his Shishya as his co-disciple, co-student, as his classmate. Because both I and my Shishya, my so-called my disciple, have been initiated to Sri Vaishnavism by my Acharya. So he should treat his own disciple as his classmate. He should never say, I am your Guru and you are my Shishya. If he says that, he ceases to be a Guru. Can we imagine this today? So this is how Acharya has beautifully enumerated what are the values that the Sri Vaishnava has to follow. This is only the tip of the iceberg I mentioned. So that is why Manavala Muni, who succeeded Acharya, who is known as Varavara Muni, who commented upon all the works of Acharya, he is known as Vyakhyana Chakravarti, or the emperor among commentators. Because in Sanskrit, a poet, a commentator who comments on a poetry, he says, Na moolam likhyate kinchin nanapekshita mukhyate. I will not write anything that is not there in the original. And I will never tell anything that is not required as far as the context is concerned. So there are several types of commentaries in Sanskrit. In fact, that is a huge ocean in itself. In Sanskrit, we have what we call as Vritti Granthas, we have Bhashya Granthas, we have Artika Granthas, we have Vyakhyanas. All these are different. In fact, the Vyakhyana Parampara of the Sri Vaishnava philosophy itself is a huge, huge topic which needs to be explained over several days or months. But in this context, the great works of the great Saint Acharya were commented upon by Manavala Muni, who is known as the Vyakhyana Chakravarti, who very beautifully brought out the inner meanings of the works of Acharya and expounded it and gave it to ordinary people like us. And Manavada Mamuni himself was one of the greatest exponents of as the practitioner of all the values mentioned in Sri Vaishnava philosophy. This is well evident when we study his Dinacharya. So we have in Sri Vaishnava philosophy, especially in Acharya philosophy, we come across a very beautiful work called Sri Varavaramuni Dinacharya. What was the daily routine of the great Manavala Mamuni or Varavaramuni? What were the things that he was doing from morning to night? How he would conduct himself with his fellow devotees, with his disciples. What was his disposition towards God? All these things are beautifully enumerated in the Varavaramuni Dinacharya, which was authored by his direct disciple called Yerambiyappa Devaraju, who was one of his 8 most important Shishyas or disciples, who are known as Ashtadigajas. So as much as the Mumuksupadi work itself is important, we have to know the stories or the historical occurrences of the Acharyas, which is very important in reforming ourselves into great Sri Vaishnavas. So as I mentioned, the 4th aspect is the Rahasya Grantha, the secret teachings regarding the practical aspects of Sri Vaishnavas. So we see that the Sri Bhashyam and Gita Bhashyam are 2 most important works that explain the philosophy portion as the Shastra Bhaga. And then the Bhagavad Vishyam and Rahasyam, which are the 2 most important works. Of course, Rahasya Grantha is not one work, it is several works, but the principal works are Mumuksupadi and Sri Vachana Bhushanam and Acharya. And other subsidiary works are in a way complementary and supplementary to these works. So the way it is studied is, first we study Mumuksupadi, then we just study Sri Vachana Bhushanam, and then we study Acharya, which is actually a summary of the Tiruvai Modi of Nammalwar in a practical manner, which is once again a highly exalted work, which was authored by Alahiya Manavada Perumal Nayanar, who was the younger brother of Kulalokacha. So with this brief introduction, I go to the next slide. One more very important aspect is to be known here, what is known as the kalakshepa tradition. So some of you might have heard the word kalakshepa. It's a very significant word in Sri Vaishnava philosophy, Sri Vaishnava religion or Sri Vaishnava sampradaya. So kalakshepa literally means whiling away one's time. That is, actually, now for example, we are in the midst of a lockdown. So how do you pass your time? Many people ask each other, how do you spend your time? So it is known as the kshepa, or passing away or throwing away time. Many times when we travel by flight or when we travel in a train, when we are also bored to read something or chant something, especially in Karnataka and Bangalore and other places, when we are traveling in a train, you have this hawkers or vendors who come with, who actually sell different eatables. So among one of those eatables that are sold is what they call, as they say, time pass kadlekai. So if you are unable to pass your time doing something worthwhile, you have to eat something. And they actually sell these salted peanuts. And it is really called time pass kadlekai. I mean, they say time pass kadlekai, they announce. And many a times, even I am not sure how how many of you have experienced? When you have nothing to do and you are bored of doing something, you feel like eating something, though your stomach is full and you are not hungry, you feel like eating something. So we try to go into the kitchen and try to actually search for something, if there is something to eat, some chocolate or something, as the case may be. So sometimes what happens, it is very difficult for people to while away that time. But that is not what kalakshepa really means. So time has to be spent in the most meaningful manner. And how time is to be spent? Because one cannot eternally eat, eternally enjoy the pleasures of life. Only for a few years, or even in those years, for some limited periods of time, we can enjoy anything. Even if you have to eat some very tasty prasadams as they are prepared in our sampradaya. Because only in Shiva Vaishnava sampradaya, all the food is sattvic. And each food has a huge significance. Because, for example, we say Shakkara Pongal. It's a very unique dish prepared in Shiva Vaishnava sampradaya only. This has been mentioned by the great Andal herself. So this has a very great significance. And she talks about a pal shoru or kshiram, which is prepared in a very unique manner in our exalted Kshetra called Melkote or Tirunarayana. Like this, there are several delicacies prepared in various Divya Deshas. But for how long can you eat and how much can you eat? Especially if it's sweet, you can only consume this much or a little bit more. You cannot consume it like you consume curd rice. Curd rice, every day we eat twice. We don't feel we enjoy it. But suppose it is payasam or something like that, if you say, if every day payasam is prepared in the house, we say, no, I don't want to have payasam. So any pleasure, it can be enjoyed only for a limited period of time. And in those days, we did not have these gadgets, we did not have this type of what we call as vocational work, where you work for 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, doing meaningless things, or things that are not conducive to your spiritual progress. So you had what is known as passing of time, or utilizing time, which is the right word, by experiencing the great pastimes of our Purvacharyas, of persons like Alwar, where in the commentaries you have Ramayana, you have Mahabharata, you have so many different types of enjoyments which are totally in line with the enjoyments prescribed for a devotee. And it is totally aesthetic in nature, it is conducive for a spiritual progress. It actually does away all the stress a person has, and it grants him great spiritual evolution. Not only spiritual evolution, mental evolution also. So this is what the kalakshepa method is, where much of the time of the acharyas and shishyas, the preceptors and the disciples, was spent in reading these works, these 4 works, which was to be studied. And there is a tradition in the teaching methodology also, where the acharya has to start the teaching after the shishyas or disciples have chanted all the taniyans or the dhyana shlokas or the propitiatory verses. Also how it is to be done, etc. It is a long process which I will explain another day. And with whom this kalakshepa has to be done? It has to be done from an acharya. But many a times what happens, the acharya who initiates us, gives the samashranam or the pancha samskara, he may not be available full time. Then what happens? a person, a Shiva Vaishnava, is permitted to have kalakshepam from another Acharya. So that is why in Shiva Vaishnava parlance, we have two types of Acharyas. One is known as the Uttaraka Acharya, the preceptor who helps the devotee transcend the mortal world. That is the person who actually gives the Pancha Samskara, or the fivefold sacrament, which is known as Tapaha, Pundraha, Tatha, Nama, Mantro, Yagascha, Panchamaha. So do you want me to explain these five things, or are you already familiar with it?
Swami, I think everyone is familiar with Pancha Samskara.
So there are several nuances that need to be explained, which I will do so whenever there is a question, or if there is any new thing that needs to be explained. So he is known as the Uttaraka Acharya, because he is the person who actually helps the person transcend this mortal world by means of initiating the devotee into the Shiva Vaishnava faith. And then you have the Upakaraka Acharya, who is the subsidiary preceptor. And there can be several preceptors like this, several Upakaraka Acharyas. He need not be one. So the principal Acharya is the Uttaraka Acharya, or the person who gives the Pancha Samskaras. Whereas the Upakaraka Acharya is the subsidiary preceptor who helps the devotee or Shiva Vaishnava in learning about all these things. That is the Grantha Chatushtayas. Sometimes the Uttaraka Acharya himself may be able to teach this, which may be an ideal situation. But many a times that may not be possible because of the absence of physical proximity. The Acharya might be staying in another place, and the Shishya might be staying in another place. And in those days, we did not have software facilities like this, which have come in the last 5-10 years. So they had this concept of Uttaraka Acharya and Upakaraka Acharya. And one very important thing that is to be noted is, all these concepts are unique to Sri Vaishnava philosophy only. In no other religion or philosophy or tradition, you have these highly evolved concepts. And I am mentioning these things because they are not generally known to people who are even those who are initiated into Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. So we have two types of preceptors, and in one of the Rahasya Granthas, it is said that there is a beautiful saying in Tamil which says, what is wrong if two persons, suppose a person has fallen into a well and he has to be rescued. What is wrong if two persons descend to the well and rescue him? Is there anything wrong if two people do it? Is it necessary that only one person has to do it? So here the person who has fallen into the well is the Jivatma, or the individual soul who is bound by this samsara. And the person who has been bound, he is actually taken up from the well of samsara by the Acharya who leads him to the God. So very beautifully, Billadoka Acharya mentions in the Shrivachana Bhushan. He says, Acha Bhagavallabham Acharya Nade and Acharya Labham Bhagavan Ade. An extremely beautiful statement which I have not come across in any other treatise. So one gets access to the God, to the Supreme Lord Narayana by means of the Acharya. And how does one get such an Acharya who will lead him to God? It is by the grace of Lord Narayana. So one acquires an Acharya by the grace of Lord Narayana. And one acquires the grace of Lord Narayana by means of the Acharya. Such a beautiful statement. So these are the two types of Acharyas who help the individual soul who is bonded overcome his bondage and ultimately reach moksha, the exalted abode of Vaikuntha. And what is the definition of an Acharya? It is very important, because unless we know the greatness of an Acharya, we will not be able to appreciate his Upadesha or his instruction. It is mentioned as Achinoti Shastrani Acharya Sthapayati Swayam Acharate Yasmati Tasmad Acharya. This has to be explained in great detail. In Sanskrit, there is a saying, Alparambha Kshemakaraha. So we have taken about 1 hour so far. So today I will conclude my exposition here.
So, Swami, I have got a little bit of a question here. I very much appreciated the overview, and but can you say why is it that you decided to jump right into Rahasya Granthas rather than giving a basis of Vishishtadvaita philosophy before? It seems like the Vishishtadvaita should come first, and after that go to the Rahasya books.
Yes. Since during our discussions we thought that we'll start with Mumuksupadi itself. So I have not more about the Siddhartha Bhaga and Gita Bhasha. I will, if you necessary, I can spend about 1 hour or so on one of these before we go into the text to deal about that.
So, for your information, we are going through Gita Artha Sangraha with Dr. Tirunarayana of Sri Rangam, and we're about three or four verses into Gita Artha Sangraha with the Raksha commentary of Vedanta Deshika. So I think it's more basic, and everyone who is attending has read Bhagavad Gita, of course, but perhaps not the Gita Bhashya of Sripad Ramanujacharya. So there might be some differences. A lot of us are coming from, some of us, of course, are Sri Vaishnavas from birth, but most of us are coming from a background of ISKCON. So we know the Bhagavad Gita of ISKCON,
Yes.
and we need to understand what differences and similarities there are with that text and that commentary from the commentary of Sripad Ramanujacharya.
Surely. Yes.
Swami, I just wanted, as you said, you wanted feedback about the structure of your class. I just wanted to say I very much appreciate the structure of your class and the slides, being able to see something, visual learning also in addition to while you're speaking is very, very helpful. So I appreciate that very, very much. Thank you so much. What is the situation, Swami, for Bhagavad Vishayam? Those works are in Tamil mainly. For those who cannot speak Tamil, those prapannas who cannot speak or read Tamil, is it that, just kalakshepa, via someone who can explain the Bhagavad Vishayam in English? Because I don't know how many translations, those books are translated.
Translations have come, but it does not, translations can only complement the teaching of an Acharya. So it is better to learn it from an Acharya. So
Excellent.
the Upanishad says, Acharya dhevahi sa vidya sa adhishtam prapat. So suppose you want to learn football or soccer, as you people call it, there might be several manuals. But unless you learn it from a person who has played football, then only it matters. So you cannot see a manual and learn football or any sport for that matter.
I agree.
The manuals are there to supplement the human teaching. So an Acharya can never be substituted by anything else.
Exactly. Tadvidhi pranipatena.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. That's the only way. Thank you so much.
Swami, you mentioned Mumuksupadi, and you also mentioned Srivachana Bhushanam by Acharya, and Acharya Hridayam Can I ask you why you did not mention Upadesha Ratnamala?
Upadesha Ratnamala, of course, that is Upadesha Ratnamala is a work by Manavana Mamuni, which actually gives the days and dates of the appearances of our Alwars and Acharyas. So, and then he goes on to, that is done in the first 30 stanzas. And then in the next next about 15 stanzas, he talks about the different commentaries of Tiruvayamudi. So it is more of a chronological account of the dates and days that they remember.
And I think at the end of it, it becomes more of a mahatmyam or a glorification of Sri Vachanabhushanam.
Then he mentions about the greatness of Sri Vachanabhushanam, etc. That has to be learned definitely and understood. But yeah, like you said, it's more of a historical account of the Alwars and Acharyas, how to remember the dates of their appearance and how for sake of celebration, etc. Of course, that is a very important work that everybody needs to know. But as far as the Sampradaya knowledge is concerned, this is very important. These are the traces that need to be learned. Of course, all with the commentaries of Manavana Mamuni.
And also, just for your information, with Dr. Tirunarayana, we are going through several Rahasya Granthas of Deshika Sampradaya.
Yes, that is also very important.
So there's very little difference, but there may be a few differences, and we may ask you to opine on the...
At the basic level, it doesn't matter much, but at the philosophy level, there are what they call Ashtadasha Vedas of the 18 ideological viewpoints. Yeah, each one has its own merits. So that is also very important. Srishailesha Patram Dhibhatyadi Gunarnavam Yatindra Pravanam Vande Ramyaja Mataram